Welcome back and thanks for stopping by. And today we are reviewing Metallica's Black Album, the big one. So I've been reviewing an album each week by Metallica for the last few months, reverse chronological order from 72 seasons right back to Kill 'Em All, and we've come down to the final 5 weeks just before Christmas, and I'm going to give you my new ranking just before the end of the new year, or the end of this year should I say. So this week it's the Black Album by Metallica. Interestingly, it's actually an untitled album. So they didn't have a title on this one. They decided to just have a plain black cover and leave it untitled. But I think a lot of people, just because it's black on the cover, they decide to call it the Black Album, including James Hetfield. So that's good enough for me. Probably based on the fact that the Beatles had the White Album. So Metallica with a Black Album kind of makes sense. And I always thought of Metallica as the Beatles of heavy metal. They are the Fab Four that basically brought heavy metal to the masses and revolutionized the whole genre. So I think it's very fitting that they have the Black Album. So with this album, we start off with the packaging. So obviously this album was released in the height of the CD as the main medium of physical format for audio. And as a result, it's over an hour long. I think it tracks in, I just check my notes here. It comes in at 62 minutes long in total. So quite a long album. The cover itself, if you've ever seen the movie Spinal Tap, you will know that in that movie the band Spinal Tap released an album and the cover is completely black. Now this was about 9 or 10 years before the Black Album was released, and there's actually a very funny clip of the band members from Spinal Tap, well the actors, and they've accosted Metallica backstage at a gig, and they're sort of insinuating to them who came up with the album cover first. So it's a completely black album cover, okay? But if you actually turn it on the light, you can see there is a kind of outline of a snake when it catches the light in a certain way. And also in the top right corner, I'm not sure if you can see it too clear there, but Metallica have a very faint logo. So Lars explained this as a concept that there was no concept for the album. You had to listen to the songs to really get the meaning. They were going away from the previous 4 albums where on the front, particularly on Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets and Justice for All, they had very iconic visuals on the front of the album cover. This album they went in a different direction. To be honest, I don't think they probably shouldn't have done that. I think this is a very, very cool piece of art here with the 4 faces of the band members, and they're kind of in the shadow, and I think they should have combined something like this into the cover of the Black Album. I thought that would have been really, really cool. It would have been kind of like the Beatles' Let It Be, and this would have, like the 4 faces, one in each corner of the 4 band members. It could have been a bit of a homage to like the way the Beatles did that. Could have been what Metallica did, but no, they decided to go with this, and it certainly didn't hurt the sales. So this album, at the moment, it's sold over 32 million units worldwide, which is absolutely outstanding for a heavy metal band. And this album certainly put Metallica on the map in terms of being a mainstream band. This album just completely broke them out of the heavy metal scene. It went to number 1 in 10 countries all over the world: USA, UK, Australia, Finland, New Zealand and Germany. And it was released through Elektra Records and Vertigo, depending on which side of the pond you were on. And it's gone on to achieve 16 times platinum in the USA. So let's start off with the production on this album. So for this album, Metallica decided to stop working with their producer, the long-time producer at that time, Flemming Rasmussen. They decided to work with a producer called Bob Rock. Now, if you're not aware, Bob Rock was a very popular producer and engineer in the 1980s for stadium rock bands, AOR or glam metal, whatever you want to call that whole scene, hair metal. He worked with, most famously, Dr. Feelgood. The album by Motley Crue was produced by Bob Rock. He also worked on some of the Bon Jovi stuff, and he worked on, I believe he was a mixing engineer or a recording engineer on Whitesnake's album, the self-titled album from 1987. So very much, you know, arena rock, stadium rock, that's a different genre to what Metallica were doing. But he certainly was a producer who was able to get fantastic sounds and he was the type of producer, because he was a guitar player, he was big into drums, he was big into his sounds, he was going to get Metallica to have this fantastic, sonically great sound that was going to just blow everyone away when you listen to it on a good set of speakers or even on FM radio. And I think that's what Metallica were really going for here. They wanted to break the stratosphere, or break that glass ceiling of being a metal band. They wanted to get into the popularity that bands like Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Bryan Adams, Whitesnake had achieved. They wanted to get into that popularity level, but on their own terms, still playing heavy music. So they certainly achieved that, there's no doubt about it. There's a fantastic documentary out there called A Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica, where it basically chronicles the recording of this album, and then it shows Metallica out on tour in support of the album. And then there's another brilliant documentary called Classic Albums, which is a shortened version of A Year and a Half in the Life, but it's also, a lot of it was recorded in 2001, and they basically run through all the different tracks, how they were recorded, who plays what parts. It's a very interesting documentary. If you like Metallica, or if you like this album, I would highly recommend it. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic album. I'd maybe just talk about some of the instruments and how they were recorded on the album. So we start off with the drums. The drums on this album were recorded in sections. So this is all pre-Pro Tools or Logic. So basically everything was recorded on tape. The engineer that worked on this album, his name was Randy Staub, and it's very famously, he has said on the documentaries that he had to record the drums in sections for the songs, and then basically chop up the drums into pieces, little clips, 12 seconds here, 10 seconds there, 15 seconds here, and then tape them all together for the best take. So Lars doesn't actually play drums for a whole song on this recording. He's playing drums, maybe say Enter Sandman, they might have taken 10 takes. They take the best parts of those 10 takes and stitch them all together for a magical take, as Bob Rock says. So to get the drums sounding so good by doing that is an achievement in itself, from an engineering point of view, audio engineering point of view. But I think the drums sound amazing on this, to be honest. Absolutely brilliant. Probably the best sounding drums Lars has had on any of the albums he's recorded. They really drive the songs, and they were also going for a groove, which was something different to what Lars had been used to. So they're very much he's playing memorable beats on a slower tempo, and I think taking inspiration from AC/DC's Back in Black. I think Lars has been quoted as saying that. So very interesting, and I think he nails it on this. I think Lars is playing is fantastic on this. And whatever studio trickery they needed to do in terms of stitching tape together to get to the end product, I think it was well worth it. In terms of the bass, obviously on Justice for All, sonically was a very different sounding album. The bass isn't really that audible, but in the Black Album, the bass is back, and it's back with power. I think the bass on this album sounds absolutely amazing. Sonically, it sounds huge. The way Bob Rock has compressed the bass down, it just sounds really, really good. And don't forget, Jason Newsted, he wasn't really a finger style picking bassist. He was a pick bassist. He uses a pick to pluck the strings. So that also helped to improve the sound and make the bass a lot maybe tighter than it would have been if you're using your fingers. So I think the bass sounds really, really good on this. We talk about lead guitar then next. So Kirk Hammett, the lead guitar is really his main contribution to the album. He doesn't play the guitar solo on Nothing Else Matters, but he plays the guitar solos on every other track. But my understanding is he doesn't play rhythm guitar on any of the tracks. So that was Kirk's job in the band up until this album and including this album. After that, he started to play some rhythm parts for Load and Reload, but on this he's just playing guitar solos. I think he does a fantastic job on this album, to be honest. There's some brilliant solos on this one. Sad But True is a fantastic solo. Enter Sandman, obviously, another brilliant solo. Wherever I May Roam has a real Hendrix vibe to it, and I love the way the outro of that song sort of rolls out and Kirk's solo keeps going. So absolutely fantastic stuff. And then we go into, before Wherever I May Roam is a song called The Unforgiven. And in my opinion, Kirk Hammett's probably his best solo. So bluesy, so much feel in it. And I absolutely love that solo. I think it's got so much emotion in it, and it's absolutely perfect for that song. So then we come on to James Hetfield's contributions. So obviously James being the primary songwriter, the vocals on this sound amazing. The vocals on this album are better than any of the previous 4 albums. He just absolutely nails it. He spent a lot of time getting the vocals right, and my understanding from listening to documentaries and different interviews and stuff is that Bob Rock told him to push his voice because he knew that he was going to be able to replicate it with the new technology that Bob Rock had brought in. So James was pushing his voice, which meant that he had more freedom. Rather, in the past, maybe he didn't push his voice as much because he didn't want to blow his voice out. Now, it turns out he did blow his voice out while recording one of the B-sides on this album, and he had to go to a canter and get his voice back into tune for the finishing of the album and then the subsequent tour. But I think Bob Rock did a fantastic job on this album in terms of supporting James Hetfield with his vocals. There's an awful lot of overdubbing and layered vocals and harmonies in this album, and all the vocals are by James only. So sounds absolutely amazing. Really, really great performance by James vocally. Now, last but definitely not least is James' rhythm guitar. Probably the most significant thing about a Metallica record or a Metallica album when you listen to it. James' rhythm on this album sounds amazing. His rhythm guitar is just so heavy. My understanding it was ESP guitars through Mesa Boogie amps and absolutely cranked, the mids taken out, and they had 2 guitar parts for the main rhythm parts, one on the left, one on the right, but then they also had a thickener down the middle. So there was a minimum of 3 rhythm guitar parts for every single song, it sounds phenomenal. It's just a wall of sound. It's like the Black Sabbath early albums, but multiplied by 10. It sounds amazing, and it really propels the songs. And I think Bob Rock did a fantastic job engineering the guitars in terms of the way they were mic'd and the selection of amps and frequencies and compression and everything else to get this distortion sound so tight and on the money. Because with James Hetfield, that's what you really need. You really need a great distortion sound to drive these great tracks. So yeah, the rhythm guitar was fantastic. Also on songs like The Unforgiving and Nothing Else Matters, he's using more acoustic styles, and he's using Telecasters and 12 strings and different guitars, acoustics, Spanish guitars. He's exploring the sound, and that was another great thing about working with Bob Rock. He wasn't afraid to push them into an area that they weren't comfortable with, and this led, in my opinion, to great results. So so production, Bob Rock obviously was the lead producer on this album with Hetfield and Ulrich, and that was pretty evident when you watch any of the documentaries. The 3 were heavily involved in the recording, mixing and mastering process, and I think it sounds amazing. I think Bob Rock was great at pulling the reins on Hetfield and Ulrich, and maybe being a mediator when Hetfield and Ulrich didn't agree on things. Bob Rock was able to step in and give his opinion and maybe sort of weigh in one direction or come to an amicable agreement. But I think the album is definitely the better for it, with him being heavily involved in the production. We'll run through the tracks on this one. So starts off with Enter Sandman, which of course a massive song for me when I was growing up. When I got this album first, I was probably about 15, 16 years of age in the late 90s, and absolutely this album blew me away. I was starting to learn guitar, starting to get into rock music, and I just couldn't get enough of this album. I played this album over and over and over again, and this is the same copy I have now, and it still plays absolutely perfectly. There's no scratches on it or anything. I looked after it, and it still plays absolutely perfect. So there you go. The CD is a fantastic medium for physical format, let me tell you. So starts off with Enter Sandman, an absolutely brilliant riff, and the whole song is essentially based around this riff and the way they're able to punctuate that song and build it up. Like, I think the intro to Enter Sandman is one of the great rock intros of all time. The way it starts off with that clean guitar, and you can just hear the drums building up. Again, a great performance by Lars, and then it kicks into the main line, and it's such a groove on this song. It's absolutely fantastic. Then we go into Sad But True, which is one of Metallica's heaviest songs. They detuned the guitars for this one. Fantastic riff, great soloing by Kirk, vocals again by Hetfield, absolutely brilliant. My understanding is this song was originally tracked a little bit faster, and then they decided to re-record it in a slowed down tempo because it makes it more heavy. And I think this song really sounds like a kind of Black Sabbath sounding song, in my opinion. It's got that real heavy pounding to it. Third song is Holier Than Thou, which I believe was James Hetfield's and Bob Rock's favourite song in terms of the lead single, but Lars was in favour of Enter Sandman, and I think Lars was right, to be honest. Holier Than Thou is a great song, but I think Sandman is a better one. Then we've got a slow track, The Unforgiven, which is kind of following that Metallica formula of having a ballad as the fourth song. I think Unforgiven is a fantastic song. Again, I spoke about the guitar solo earlier. I think it really, really rocks on this one, but it's got so many different parts. A very interesting thing about The Unforgiven is that the verses are heavy and the choruses are actually clean. So the verses are distorted, the choruses are clean, and that's a juxtaposition in relation to a lot of Metallica or a lot of rock in general. You would have a clean verse and then a heavy chorus. So this is switch these things around, and I never realized that. You know, I listened to the song and I liked the song, and I subconsciously might not have known that. I just enjoyed the song for what it is, and then one of the days I heard that on a documentary and I was like, oh, you're actually right. Yeah, I never copped that. And then song number 5 is Wherever I May Roam, one of my favourite Metallica songs. Absolutely love it. It sounds fantastic. Apparently when Metallica were doing the final mixes on this album, they brought Glenn Danzig from the Misfits into the control room, and they asked him to have a listen, and he said Glenn was just blown away by the heaviness of this song. Kirk uses some Eastern scales in this one to get that kind of sound, but I absolutely love Wherever I May Roam. I think it's one of Metallica's best songs. Absolutely classic, and you can't listen to this one low. Has to be absolutely cranked. So heavy. Then we get song number 6, Don't Tread on Me, which for me, this is where the album kind of takes a small little dip. Still a great song, but probably not as good a quality as the previous 5. Then on the second half of the album, we get True Than Ever, which is a class song, absolutely brilliant, really fast, riffing on that from James Hetfield. Really classic Metallica there. Song number 8 is where Metallica break all the rules and do a pure ballad with very little heavy parts to it at all, apart from Lars drumming. My understanding is James plays all the guitars on this one, and then Michael Kamen was brought in to arrange the orchestra which accompanied this song. And then on the back of that, following the release of this album, or should I say 8 years later, Metallica went and they recorded the S&M album. So yeah, very, very interesting history on that, but I think nothing else matters. To be honest with you, it's a great rock ballad. I know a lot of Metallica fans don't like it, but I think it's a very good song, and I think it stands up to the test of time. And again, a great guitar solo by James Hetfield, just showing that he can play guitar just as good as probably anyone out there, you know. Song number 9 is Of Wolf and Man. Again, another great track, heavy, great riffing from Hetfield on that. Number 10 is The God That Failed. So Jason, apparently, I think he co-wrote this song, but he wanted this... No, sorry, not this one, it was the next one. The God That Failed is a Hetfield song, but again, it starts off with a lot of bass and drums in the intro. And yeah, again, an absolutely brilliant song. They played this song in Dublin when I first saw Metallica in 2006, and it was absolutely brilliant. The next song then, sorry, getting ahead of myself, My Friend in Misery. This is co-written by Jason Newsted, who I should say, this is Jason's first album. Probably should have said that at the start. So the lineup for the band is Hetfield, Ulrich, Hammett and Jason Newsted. It's Jason's first album after the passing of Cliff Burton. Sorry, Jason's second album after the passing of Cliff Burton. But you could argue it's the first album he's audible on. So yeah, Jason Newsted came to the fore in this one, and he originally wanted My Friend of Misery to be an instrumental track similar to Orion or something like that, but didn't happen. James had vocals he wanted to put to it, and I still think it's a great track. And live, Jason used to do, back in the 90s, I mean, Jason used to do a segment where he would actually, you know, do like a bass guitar solo, and he would use this song, the riff in this song, to kind of kick that off, and I thought that was very, very cool. The last song then is The Struggle Within, which I don't think is a great song, to be honest. They probably could have left that song off the album, and I don't think it would have made a difference, but it's there, and look, it's not their worst song, but yeah, probably not their best. So this album, it was recorded at 1-on-1 Studios in Los Angeles. I'm just trying to see, is there any other info I need to fill you in on? No, I think I'm pretty much there, to be honest. But yeah, this is one of my favourite Metallica albums. Definitely was a few months ago. You're gonna have to wait until the end of the year to see if it's still my favourite Metallica album. But it's the one that got me into Metallica. Means so much to me as a young 15, 16-year-old guitar player starting off in rock and metal music, trying to get inspiration. This album was the one that kicked it all off for me, and I absolutely love it. So have a listen if you like this album. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you like this album, or do you think it's where Metallica started to turn into more a mainstream band and you don't really enjoy it? Please let me know in the comments. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, share. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you on the next one. Bye for now.